Okay, we have the meeting of the Auburn Schools Master Building Plan Team, February 25th, and I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the meeting is being recorded. Is there anyone else recording the meeting? There are none. Any citizens' comments? There are no citizens, so we have no citizens' comments. We have minutes from the previous meeting, which I believe is November 19th. If anyone has any changes, if not,
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is a vote. Okay, it's been quite a while since we've met, and we've been able to keep it going somewhat from a few different aspects, and we can explain that as we go along. If you look at the schedule, the early part of this year is really kind of was really kind of a catch-up type few months anyway, and as it turns out, the Mass School Buildings Authority has come out with a reimbursement program that would really affect what we're doing, particularly from a budgeting standpoint. So I think you'll see as we go along, it's probably good that we're kind of treading water here for a month or two until that whole thing gets played out. And Joe, could you explain a little bit about it?
Sure. The school department put in a statement of interest for the accelerated repair program on February 14th, and they're due February 14th, and they meet quarterly, so we may have an answer in April as far as where we stand. What we did was we put in two categories for the middle school. We put in the roof, and we also put in, three, HVAC and boiler replacement. So, to be continued. And again, this is 50% reimbursement we hope to get out of this project.
So if we put up 100,000, they put in 50?
They would put in, correct.
Yep, yep. But the way this affects us, some of the CIP funds that would have been transferred to this account may get affected somewhat.
They may. One thing that the MSBA kind of encourages is that we have those matching funds available. So I think that puts us in a better spot. Whereas if we didn't have those matching funds, we'd probably be put to the bottom of the pile.
Right.
So it's good that we're fortunate that we have the matching funds, not to complete the whole projects, but at least it gives us a place mark.
Right, right. So you would be in all probability, you would be using some of the funds that we may have been dealing with for matching funds, possibly.
Possibly.
Yep, yep. And hopefully that will play out over the next couple of months. So it just makes sense to kind of sit tight here for a little bit, it seems. Are there any questions on that program?
Only talking 2 months.
Yeah, and it really, this was kind of a fudge time anyway, so I don't think it really affects us. And there's no sense in really trying to start up and hire an architect until we know exactly what we're going to have for funds, so.
That was going to be my question. If we hired an engineer to get going on it, at least for the exterior, would that imperil?
Well, there are enough funds freed up now, I believe, for the site work and for the site designer. So we could, and later on in the thing we can explain it, we could get that part of it going, and it makes sense to get that part of it going for two reasons: to get it done this summer, but also to know where the numbers are, because it really is the biggest number in the thing. So it would make sense to do that part of it.
At least get the A&E.
Yep, yep. And we're all in agreement Mary Ellen, that there are funds available
There are,
for
correct.
that.
Yes.
So,
Now, Rick, the 50% reimbursement, is that 50% of the money that you put up, or is it 50% of the project? In other words, if the project's $100,000, are they gonna match 50,000 with 50,000, or are they gonna match the money with, 50% of?
What they will do is, once, if we get selected, what their next step would be is they'd send a team of I don't know if their engineers or their group of people would come in and they'd assess our needs. And they would put the dollar amount on what it would cost for that particular repair.
Okay, and then they're gonna give us 50% of that dollar cost?
They would give us 50%, obviously, we would have to come up with
With
the
the
other
rest of
portion
it,
of it.
yeah.
At least these dollar amounts here, this is what we have set aside already. So it might be more.
Okay.
I can't imagine it would be less.
Less, yeah.
but again, the whole thing's in a little bit of flux
Yeah.
until we know, what they're gonna approve and how that affects the other money that we have, so.
Will that require town meeting action this year? I know that you've mentioned that we're gonna ask that some of the funds that we've got be repurposed.
Right.
Will the matching funds need that town meeting action this year, or?
I would,
Not for this particular, not for
Okay.
these specific projects, because they have already been
They've already
identified
been
in our
identified,
CIP.
yeah.
So these 3 items would not have to go to the town, correct?
And further, what Mr. Kazanovich has recommended is for any requests that we're going to look for transfers for CIP, that we request that they go to more generally the 10 Swanson Road renovations and updates. So that way, we're not tied to, because obviously we're going to need to get, procurements, and we won't know exact costs, but to get a sum of money. And we had that conversation with Mr. Kazanovich probably a few weeks back or so, and he was very comfortable with that recommendation.
there will certainly be repurposing at this year's
Yes.
town meeting.
Correct.
At the annual town meeting, so. So that's sort of the, one little thing that came up, but in the overall scheme of things, it seems like it's a good thing. In the meantime, we've done a little bit of work on the budget, and if you look at the sheet, just juggling some numbers back and forth as we're able to pin them down. We're holding $225,000 as general conditions, and typically that's only about 10% of the project, so we should be very comfortable there. The architect and engineering fees, we're holding a placeholder of $80,000. Whether that's going to be enough or not, we don't really know until we actually go out for the architect. Later on in the meeting, we can go over the site design of the civil engineer, and it's a pretty reasonable number. So at least for the time being, we'll keep that 80,000 in there, and that may go up a little bit. We'll see how that plays out. The site work, we had Granger Lynch, their estimating department, look at the whole project, and they did quite a detailed, gave us quite a detailed verbal estimate of $350,000 for the project. So we've got that in there, plus another 20 for landscaping. So that's really the biggest part of the project, and it's the one that we're going to know firsthand. So if it's a little bit over, we're going to know that, and we can adjust the budget as we go, the rest of the budget as it goes along. The other numbers are they're really based on what we think the actual work is going to happen. Some of the smaller, the concrete and masonry numbers, and the rough carpentry and all that. The cubbies are replacing the lockers in the classrooms, and we have an actual price on those that we know would be a maximum price, and it probably is going to end up a little bit less than that. So that's a good-sized part of the budget, but it should be something that we're pretty comfortable with. The doors and hardware are the next big numbers, and we've got numbers from door suppliers and put a labor number on it, so pretty comfortable with that number, replacing all of the classroom doors. The aluminum entrances is the next big number, and it, really, until we get an architect on board, we won't know exactly what he's going to, how he's going to lay that out, but it's a pretty good chunk of money that would, for a placeholder there, so we should be pretty comfortable with it. Drywall and tile, and again, it's just sort of sitting down and going through room by room and seeing what we're going to use. So most of those next numbers down to the flooring, we're pretty comfortable with. The flooring, if you look at it initially, we had budgeted $100,000, but it really, I think at the time we were thinking that all the classrooms were going to get new flooring and everything, which they're not. It's already been done for the most part. The next big number is the painting number, and the district put an RFP out for painting all of the classrooms. It came in Monday at $48,000. So the 50 is in the ballpark. We've still got to paint the kitchen, and we've still got to paint some of the corridors and whatnot. So, you know, but I think we're certainly in the ballpark there. So the next big number is the marker of the teaching boards in each of the classrooms, and we have actual quotes on that of $80,000. That's an original quote. So, you know, I'm sure as it gets competitive when we put it out to 2 or 3, that number is going to come down. Kitchen equipment is really the other thing that we need to maybe. It's good that we're holding off for a couple of months here with the design. There is a new food service director, Janice King. She's worked a little bit with how she wants to redo the kitchen, but not quite as far along as we thought she was going to. She just hasn't had a chance to do it. So she's in the process of talking with a designer and trying to get that worked out, and hopefully by the next meeting, hopefully before the next meeting, we have something that we can send out to you as far as what the recommended layout is and what the cost of the equipment is. So, but we just really don't have anything more specific on that right now. The next 4 numbers are really, until we get an architect on board, they're really placeholders for what we think we're going to be spending in the kitchen areas when that whole renovation goes through. So at this point, it's probably enough. Whether it's going to have to go up or go down, we'll see as that goes along. We've kept a placeholder for the technology. And again, I think until we actually get to it, we're probably going to want to keep that number there and see how that whole thing plays out. And then we've still got the $50,000 for the ed plan and the construction contingency. So we're still in that $1.8 million range, and it seems like some of the big numbers have been tightened up. So, I think we're getting there. So.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
can you move AL smart boards to from those old schools over to new grammar school?
I would certainly think we
Correct.
would.
90% of the classrooms currently at the middle school have them there. So it's just a matter, I think there's 2 classrooms that we have to
Yep.
bring them from other schools. But yeah,
These aren't
that is the
smart
plan.
boards now. These are whiteboards that would
Like
replace
black-
the
Like a
blackboards.
little blackboard, right?
Right.
You're thinking of the smart board, you're thinking of the
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah.
Yes, they can be repurposed.
Now you're gonna make the doorways bigger? That way you're replacing all the doors?
We're not going to replace we're not going to make the doorways bigger, or at least the intent isn't at this point. It is to replace the doors and certainly the hardware from a security standpoint. The doors will have a smaller vision panel so that you can't
Okay.
see quite so much into the doors and through the doors. So if there should be an emergency or some reason that they needed to be secure, I think this would really help us along that route.
You know what material's gonna be all steel or?
No, it'd be wood, solid core wood. So that's sort of the budget. we're certainly in the ballpark, at this point, at least, we don't see anything that we're ridiculously, out of line with. Any questions on the budget, or?
Now, the aluminum entrances, Rick, those going to be security entrances?
Well, this would be at the main entrance,
Yeah,
at
okay.
least at the main entrance.
Okay.
Joe had already planned to move that vestibule back to make it larger in
Yeah.
essence. But that's got to be done in conjunction with the way that we work with the two bathrooms there
Yeah.
too. And the quality of those entrances can be a lot better. It's very similar to the high school, actually, so. The next article on the agenda is the design and construction bidding requirements, and I'm not sure what everybody thought, but I know in myself, I was sort of expecting that we would be approving invoices and all that, as we did with the high school. The budget really is not, where this is an advisory committee, the budget isn't really under our control, so it would be approved by the school department, and I've asked Peter if he could sort of go over the bidding requirements, how we're gonna put things out, and then how the invoicing would be handled and all that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, under Mass General Law 30B, any repairs that will be done to 10 Swanson Road will be... They're not, I'm trying to be going to be contingent upon the dollar amount. Dollar amount thresholds actually dictate whether or not we can just look for best business practice and solicit 3 bids, or whether or not we have to go out through a formal RFP process. So myself and Mr. Fahey will handle that RFP process. If it's a sealed bid, we'll have a sealed bid opening just as standard practice, and then once we go through and we qualify the bids that came in, the bidder who meets our qualification, the lowest bid would be awarded that bid. We also have the option, if we want, to go out where there's a pre-certified bid list certified by the state, which means that it's a much quicker system because the state's already pre-qualified those people. Once that process is completed, then the bids are awarded, we issue a purchase order, the work is completed, and then once the work's completed, Mr. Fahey and I agree that the work has been completed according to the specifications, we would approve payments, and then I would anticipate that we would provide periodic updates to this committee just to let them know where we stand as far as expenditures and compared to the budget. So that's, it's a pretty simple process. As I said, we have to follow Mass General Law 30B when it comes to all this renovation.
And you don't really need a vote of this committee on individual invoices or anything like that?
No, that'll be left up to Mr. Fahey and I. Of course, Superintendent of Schools is the Chief Procurement Officer, and she would ultimately be responsible, but we would make recommendations to her based on whatever the bids come in, and then ultimately whatever payments are to be made.
Yep. Any questions? Or?
You won't have to sign 400 change orders
No.
the first time. You give me a pack of paper like
don't.
that. Sign these 400 things, would you?
Yep.
The job gets easier.
It does. Absolutely it does. There's no doubt about that. So, there are a few situations where the committee would be voting. We would ask the committee to vote to recommend certain things to the school committee. And the first of those is the RFP that Joe put out for the site design services, and this is the civil engineering for the parking lot expansion. I gave you a sheet that sort of explains it, but basically what we did is once we discussed in November the basic idea of how we're going to expand what the scope of work would be, how we're going to expand the parking lot. So we took that and met with the DPW director and the assistant town engineer to see what their comments would be and if they wanted to add anything into the RFP, and also if they could help us out in any part of this. And it's certainly, to design this isn't beyond their ability, but it certainly is beyond their time. So they couldn't design the whole project, but they were certainly willing to assist us during the during the bid process and with the permitting, and they are certainly willing to oversee the construction, which saves us a pretty good chunk of money. They don't anticipate that they would have someone on site full-time, but certainly maybe once a day or once every other day or something like that, just to keep an eye on it. So with that, there was an RFP that was sent out to 3 local engineers, Graves Engineering, Waterman Associates, and Quinn Engineering, and all 3 work for the town, all 3 work in front of the town. And from time to time, they will do peer reviews of each other. So they're all very familiar with the town, and Mr. Coyle is very comfortable with all 3 of them. We put it out, and the following proposals came back. Graves Engineering was at 15.5, Waterman Associates at 17.2, and Quinn Engineering at 19.8. And I believe, Joe, you've looked at the references?
Looked at their references, they all check out.
Yep. So given that, I think the recommendation would be if unless anyone has any objections, that we hire, or we recommend that the school committee hire Graves Engineering.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion, any?
Mr. Chair, just as an aside, Mr. Fahey, do you know why there was such a discrepancy, like between Graves and Quinn? I mean, was there anything that they responded to why there's, that big gap?
We sent out apples for apples to each of these 3 engineering firms, and that's the price that came back. We went over them all. They're all, believe it or not, they're all pretty close. I can't answer why Quinn was so much higher,
Okay.
and nor did I pursue that.
Sure, I just didn't know what in their response if they had.
But I think that all 3 of them, as Mr. Ringard indicated, they all have done work in the town before. They're all professionals. They're all, they all work with each other, and I think it's all pretty much in the same ballpark.
Yeah, these are pretty close numbers, actually, but it's, it could be a timing thing, too, because we need to have this out on the street at the end of May, so they've got to kind of get on this right away. So, they're all 3 small firms, so, maybe they just couldn't
Yeah.
fit it in, it's a...
The third one,
Numbers
Mr.
being
Quinn,
so
actually, he
low.
did come to the site and view it.
$2,000 seems like a
So
big
it's not like he
difference.
It's a
was
big
on something
percentage.
that he
It's
wasn't
not- yeah.
familiar with,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious, that's all, no
Yeah.
big deal.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is so voted. Now, the next part of the next item on the agenda is the architectural design RFP, and that will be a little more involved because it's quite a bit more money. Just to throw some ideas out there and some information out there on it, we sent the scope to actually 4 different architects, and just asking, off the cuff what they thought their fees would be. And if you think the site was a spread, the architectural estimates were anywhere from $15,000 to $142,000. So it really, it's going to get involved here a little bit with the architects. So architects typically that do public work assume that they're going to have a fee in the 8 to 9% range. So we need to do 2 things to address that. We need to get that's 8% of the overall project cost. We need to get the project cost down. And I think we can do that by doing some of the work on our own, like the painting and the carpeting, and back all that out, and the site work, back all that out. So that's going to bring the number down. But I think once we get a final scope, I think Joe's idea of putting it out with a not-to-exceed number is going to help us quite a bit, too. So,
I think, Mr. Chairman, once they sit down and they see more specifically what we're looking for. It isn't an entire scope of service for a building coming out of the ground.
Right.
It's little fix up here, fix up there,
Yep.
change this over here. So, I think the 8 to 10% is gonna come drastically.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think a fixed fee based on some, good background knowledge, I think you'll find a lot of recipients.
Yep.
And could we kind of aim for doing that so that, I realize that work probably won't happen until summer of 15.
The actual construction won't, but if you
Right.
look at the schedule, we'd like to have this thing
Right.
designed and ready to go at the end of
Right.
the
There
fall
might
next year.
be areas that can happen even while school's in session.
Well, possibility. Certainly the non-architectural things can be bid now, and
Right.
we're trying to do that with
Cubbies and such.
painting the cubbies, the marker boards that may well be able to do it, sure. And in the meantime, this $1.8 million number might come down, the actual construction number might be half of that. Might be $1 million for all we know. So, and at that point, as you say, the architectural scope is going to be a lot more defined, so. So the gist of it is, and the other part of that really plays into this is the kitchen equipment. We've got to really get that pinned down. And she's told us that by the next meeting, she will be able to give us some sort of presentation as far as what her thinking is and what the cost might be.
So what is your idea that this committee do relative to item 10, architectural design RFP?
I think we just sit tight for the time being.
Sit for the month, 2 months?
Yeah, yeah, because we really don't know what they're gonna have to do in that kitchen until she comes back and you know.
Now, has she seen the equipment that are in the two
Yes.
buildings that are closing, so that she knows what's new in there that can be moved?
She has, but in all honesty, I mean, she's just come on board too, so she's trying to catch up with everything that's going on. And also, you know, do this part of it too,
Yeah.
so.
You must have an inventory of the new stuff, Joe, right?
We do, and
Yeah.
actually, she has seen all the
Has seen all that?
equipment.
Yeah,
She's very impressed with all the equipment because a lot of it's new, so she's
Yeah, a
thinking
lot
of
of that
using
stuff
a
that
lot
you've
of
been doing in
stuff.
those elementary schools is absolutely tremendous, I'll
Yeah.
tell you.
so. So probably at this point, the next meeting would be really pinning down the food service numbers. And hopefully we have a better idea on the budget numbers that are gonna be repurposed and see where we go from there. Then at that point, see how we hire an architect, so. Any comments or?
I have a question, Mr.
Yeah.
Burdette, if I could. And looking at the conceptual budget, the word railings popped out to me. And it's not something I thought of earlier when we were talking.
What, I'm sorry, what, really?
The railings, and I'm thinking of the current middle school, and there's 3 places in that building that I can recall where there's railings overlooking like a first floor. Two are one at the 6th grade wing, one at the 7th grade wing, and then there's one over the landing going down to the calf.
Yep,
The one going down to the calf, they put up some sort of netting because they felt it wasn't safe.
We put up a metal grate
Okay,
because
and I'm
it was
wondering if-
actually, we're afraid the kids are actually gonna slide underneath there.
And I'm wondering if there's any thoughts of changing the 2 on the 2nd floor, because as 6th grade teachers, it seemed like our 6th graders were drawn to that railing. They liked to climb it. They would be on the floor peeking under to look down. And I'm thinking the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students are even smaller, and they could probably actually fall through it. So I'm thinking something ought to be done to make that a little safer.
They just close right off?
Well, I don't know.
We could probably do this, something similar to like we did outside the gym.
Yeah.
So,
I
that's a good
mean,
point.
we actually
That's-
stood on duty at that spot because it was like they just came to that area.
yep.
And I'd hate to think of an accident
I think,
with even the younger students going over it or under it or.
yeah, I think the actual code is it's gotta be closer than 4 inches,
4 inches,
correct?
Okay, 'cause I don't believe it is now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
that's
it may well be, and we
measured.
can, before we redo this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for a final time, but before the next one, we can take a look at that, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
for
should
some
be
reason,
caught.
as I said, the students just like to go to that railing and
Sure.
look down.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
did you get any report on the roof? Is asbestos up there, or the testing you were doing?
we did get a report on the roof, and the roof is sort of playing out as a part of this MSBA reimbursement. To replace the entire roof is somewhere in the vicinity, give or take, 500,000. There is very little asbestos in it. There's some flashing on the, going up on the roofs and some on the edges, but not very much at all. So, the roof is gonna be a big part of this, how we figure out that whole thing works. The roof isn't actually a part of, it's a maintenance item, so it's not really a part of what this committee is doing. But it will be a part of what Joe, how Joe figures out everything is gonna get paid for. Roof could be done in stages if we had to.
Would that be a good idea to do it that way?
Could be done,
Yeah.
yep.
You wouldn't be afraid of a lot of leaks that way?
Not necessarily. Any other questions? Or-
Mr. Chair, I have a question, just regarding the 50% matching funds. Does that only apply for the first three that were noted at the beginning of the meeting, or is that?
Yes, that is separate. Those matching funds don't really apply to any of this budget. It only applies to the maintenance items that
Three maintenance
that Joe
that
is
were
doing.
mentioned.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep, yep. But because there are matching funds that we have to supply, it has an effect on our budget. So, and that's why we really need, another 4, 5, 6 weeks to see the whole picture before we can commit one way or the other. So,
Yeah, with the roof, we probably have to cough up $220, $240,000. That takes our coffee and donut money out.
yeah. There's a lot of different things, a lot of little pots here and there, and they just need to be looked at in totality and before we make a final decision where it's going, so. New business, does anyone have anything to? Do we know when the SBC meeting is, the
I
next
did
one?
inquire to find out, they don't have it, I was just checking my mail to see if they'd gotten back to me. They don't have a definitive date set yet, so we could either wait until see when that one is, and see if it works for the committee, or we could set another date now, because you were saying 6 to 8 weeks you thought we'd need for this other information before that.
Yeah,
Potential?
really,
Yeah.
I would, going by what you thought as far as that whole end of the budget to work out. Certainly Janice needs a few weeks,
Right.
obviously, so, if we thought around the end of, maybe the last week in March or something like that.
Okay.
I have the calendar.
Tuesday, the 25th of March is
Right.
the last Tuesday in the month. Actually, that's 09.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see.
Trying to save money here.
If we do, thank you for noticing that.
Does that work for everyone, the 25th of March?
But that's, once again, that's a planning board night. As long as you're out of here by 6:45, I'm fine.
Yeah,
Or we could do it on
We
Monday, the
certainly-
24th, if Monday's better for people, that's up to you. Do you think, or by the 18th, do you think we'd have that information that's needed?
what do you think, Joe? She's got some work to do,
She does have some work to do.
yeah.
March 25th, is
25th,
that what you want?
yeah,
25th,
all right?
Great.
Works for everyone?
at 6 p.m.
Good.
I'll send that out to everybody.
And 6 works for everyone?
Yep.
Good. Any other questions or anything anybody wants to add or throw into this? Or
The lockers, what's the material there now? What are you gonna replace it with?
Well, there are metal lockers there now, and I think what Joe's got in mind is a wooden cubby. It's about 12 inches wide and 48 54 inches high
Now,
somewhere.
is that something that APAC can make for us?
There's a lot of them.
Now, you're gonna
I
take those
mean,
things out?
APAC Technical High School,
Yeah, he's gonna
Yeah,
pull the
pull them out,
markers
yeah.
out, yeah.
They have to get pulled.
the project.
You can buy these things off the shelf, but you can also have them made too, you know, so that may be something that we want to explore as it goes along. Any other questions? Nope. Motion to adjourn?
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
There were 14 seconds over here.
Adjourn.